In the beginning there was silence, an ancient kind of silence that lived before words, before prayers, before even the thought of being found. And in that silence the hills breathed softly beneath the weight of dusk. The shepherd walked alone through the fading light, his staff tracing slow lines in the dust, and the air itself seemed to wait, listening for a sound that had not yet come, the cry of the lost. He had counted them all at dawn, every heartbeat of wool and warmth, every gentle life entrusted to his care. And yet, as the sun slipped behind the ridges, he felt the absence of one. Small, frightened, wandering beyond the fold of safety. The others pressed close together, their bodies a soft tide of life. But his eyes were fixed on the horizon where shadow met earth. He whispered to the night, not a word, but a question that belonged to love itself. "Where are you?" And the wind carried it across the valley like a prayer too honest to be spoken aloud. The first star rose, trembling, and the world turned silver at its edges, but still he did not move. He remembered the sound of that one sheep's breath, the way it always lingered behind, distracted by a flower or a butterfly or some mystery only innocence can see. And now that same innocence might be trembling somewhere in the cold. He tightened his cloak, felt the rough fabric against his skin, and began to walk, the ground hard under his feet, the stones glowing faintly with the memory of the day's heat. Each step was a rhythm older than speech, the rhythm of seeking, and the night unfolded around him like a vast, breathing heart. There was danger in those hills, ravines that swallowed sound, wolves that moved without moonlight. But he did not weigh the risk. Love had already made the choice. Far below, the village lamps began to shimmer awake, small fires flickering like prayers left at an unseen altar. And for a moment, he wondered if anyone down there knew how far love would go for just one soul. The thought made him smile, a weary, sacred smile, and he kept walking. The path narrowed, the air grew sharp with pine and stone, and every shadow seemed to lean closer as if the world itself were holding its breath for the reunion yet to come. Somewhere in that darkness, a soft bleat broke the silence, faint, uncertain, like a memory calling from the edge of sleep, and the shepherd's heart leapt. He stopped, listened, every sense alive. Again the sound came, closer now but muffled by the wind, and he began to move faster, the staff steadying his steps as he descended toward the unseen. The grass whispered underfoot, dew gathering like tears on his sandals, and in that fragile stillness he felt the weight of all the lost things the world had ever known, each one waiting to be found. He thought of the days when he himself had been lost, when his own soul had wandered far from peace, and how a voice not of this earth had once called him by name. That memory burned in him, now like a hidden fire. He followed the cry through a narrow gorge where the moonlight could not reach, his breath clouding in the chill. And there, between two stones slick with moss, he saw movement, small and trembling. The lamb was caught, its leg wedged between the rocks, its eyes wide with terror. For a long moment, neither moved. Then slowly he knelt, his shadow falling over the frightened creature like a sheltering wing. "It's all right," he murmured, not to calm the lamb, but to steady his own heart, and he reached out. The lamb flinched, bleated once, and then fell silent as his hands touched its matted wool. Gently, patiently, he freed it from the trap, feeling the tiny heartbeat flutter against his palm. When at last it stood, unsteady and exhausted, He lifted it into his arms. The night seemed to breathe again. He could feel its warmth through the coarse wool of his cloak, the fragile proof that what was lost could still be found. The wind rose around them, carrying the scent of rain and distant fields, and he turned back toward the fold. The hills no longer looked empty. Every stone seemed alive, every shadow full of meaning. The lamb pressed its face against his shoulder, and he whispered to it as though to a child, "You are home now." Yet even as he said the words, he knew they were meant for more than the creature in his arms. They were for every heart that had ever wandered, for every soul that had thought itself beyond the reach of mercy. The stars brightened overhead, countless and close, as though heaven itself leaned down to watch the moment when the lost was carried home. He walked slowly now, not from weariness but from reverence, as if each step upon the earth deserved a pause, a breath, a moment of gratitude for being found. The lamb slept against his chest, its tiny heartbeat a rhythm that seemed to echo the pulse of creation itself. And in that steady thrum he heard a language older than words, the language of return. The valley opened before him, wide and silver under the moon, and the shadows stretched long like memories reaching toward forgiveness. Somewhere far behind him, the echo of his own voice still lingered in the canyons, the call that had crossed the dark, and he realized that love always leaves an echo. It cannot be contained in silence. The rocks beneath his feet were slick with dew, the path uncertain, but the staff in his hand found its place by instinct, like faith finding foothold in doubt. Each time the wind brushed past his face, he imagined it carried whispers from the heavens, reminders that nothing truly lost is ever forgotten. He thought of how the world measured worth by multitude, by the strength of the flock, by the safety of numbers, and how heaven measured differently, by the worth of one. One cry, one tear, one wandering soul. The thought humbled him, and he felt the weight of the lamb not as burden, but as truth. Ahead, the faint glow of his campfire flickered between trees, a promise of warmth. Yet he slowed his pace to savor the in-between, the sacred corridor between loss and restoration. In that space, he felt nearer to God than in any temple carved by human hands. The hills rose like ancient guardians, and the stars above them burned in quiet procession, their light the same that had once guided exiles, prophets, dreamers. He remembered stories of other shepherds, of David singing psalms beneath the same sky, of Moses leading flocks before hearing his name in flame. And he wondered if all who guard the fragile are somehow being taught the heart of the divine. The lamb stirred, gave a small bleat, then nestled closer, and he smiled at how trust could return so quickly when held by gentleness. Around them, the world was vast, indifferent, yet at that moment it felt intimate, every breeze a caress, every rustle a benediction. He began to hum softly, a melody without shape, born of gratitude. It wove through the night like incense, rising from his breath into the unseen. In that music, he felt the presence of all who were wandering, the broken, the ashamed, the ones who no longer believed they could be found. His song was for them too. The trail bent along a ridge where the valley dropped away in shadow, and he stopped to look down. Far below, mist pooled like unspoken sorrow, and above it, the stars shimmered like promises waiting to be kept. He whispered again, "You are not alone," though the words were swallowed by the wind, and he knew they would still find their way. words born of mercy always do. The night grew colder, but within his cloak, the warmth of the rescued life radiated outward, and he felt a strange inversion, that by saving the lamb, he himself was being saved anew. The memory of his own straying returned, not as guilt, but as understanding, and he saw how the path of the seeker and the sought are one and the same. The shepherd and the lost belong to each other, bound by the circle of compassion. He walked on, through fields that glimmered with frost, past trees whispering in the dark, until the first pale hint of dawn brushed the sky. The horizon blushed faintly, and birds began to murmur in the thickets. He breathed deeply, and in that breath, the whole night dissolved into peace. The light touched the lamb's wool, turning it to gold, and he knew the journey was not just to bring the lost home, but to remind the finder what love truly is: a flame that searches, carries, and never counts the cost. The sun came slowly over the horizon, soft, patient, tender, as though it too understood the holiness of return. The shepherd paused on the ridge to watch the first light spill into the valley. Every blade of grass glittered with dew. Every bird lifted its voice in shy wonder, and for a breathless moment the world seemed new again. He held the lamb closer, feeling its tiny heartbeat steady against his own, and in that rhythm he heard a quiet truth: salvation is never hurried. The way back to grace unfolds at the speed of love. He started down toward the fold, and as he walked, he remembered the nights he had called out to heaven with no answer. How long those silences had felt, how easily despair had whispered that no one was coming. Yet now he knew that silence had not been absence, but the sound of footsteps drawing near. He smiled at the memory, humbled by how blind gratitude can be when it first begins to see. The path wound through olive trees, their leaves shimmering silver green, and the scent of morning earth rose around him like incense from an invisible altar. He thought of all the people who had passed through this valley: workers, wanderers, soldiers, and wondered how many had carried invisible burdens heavier than flocks. How many had been searching for something they could not name. Love was always searching. It never waited behind locked doors. The lamb stirred awake, blinking at the dawn, and he whispered, "You're safe now," though part of him knew the words were for every broken piece of his own soul. When the fold came into view, the rest of the flock lifted their heads, bleating in recognition, a chorus of relief that rippled through the air. The shepherd laid the lamb down among them, and they pressed close as though to welcome the lost back into belonging. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching the gentle chaos of reunion, feeling the warmth of life, returning to order. Then he sank to his knees, not from exhaustion but from awe, and thanked the one who had taught him to seek. He remembered the nights when he had been the lamb, caught between rocks of fear and shame, and how a greater shepherd had lifted him, unworthy and trembling, back into light. Tears rose unbidden, not of sorrow, but of recognition. To be found is to remember who you've always been. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the scent of new day, and the shepherd felt the strange quiet that comes after miracle, the stillness that asks what one will do with such grace. He knew he would keep walking these hills, keep listening for the smallest cry, because love that has been found becomes love that seeks. He looked at the flock, their white forms glowing in the sun, and whispered a vow to the morning that none under his care would ever be forgotten. Somewhere within him, a voice answered, not his own, deeper, older, saying that this promise was the echo of heaven itself, the endless search that never ends because it is born of eternity. The shepherd smiled, and in that smile was peace. As the sun climbed higher, light began to pour across the hills, spilling into every hollow and corner that had once been shadow, and the shepherd felt its warmth sink into his skin like forgiveness itself. He sat upon a flat stone, his staff resting beside him, and listened to the slow breathing of the flock. The lamb that had been lost now grazed nearby, limping slightly, yet content, and he marveled at how quickly fear could become peace once love had intervened. The world was quiet, but not empty. Every sound, from the chirping of crickets to the whisper of wind through grass, seemed to carry a hidden hymn. He closed his eyes and let the rhythm of the land speak. Beneath that music, another voice stirred, the inward voice that comes only in stillness. It asked him what it truly means to be lost. He thought of maps and borders, of paths that twist through wilderness, but none of that felt enough. Lostness, he realized, was not about distance but disconnection. It was the forgetting of one's belonging. A soul becomes lost not when it wanders far, but when it forgets it is loved. He let that truth settle like light inside him. How many had he met? Faces hardened by survival, eyes dulled by sorrow, who walked through life believing no one sought them. The ache in his chest told him he had once been one of them. To be found is not to be discovered, but to be remembered. He whispered a prayer, not of words, but of awareness, thanking the one who never forgets. Around him, the flock moved lazily, the air sweet with clover, and he watched how they stayed near him, trusting his voice. Trust, he thought, is the soil where faith grows. Without it, even light feels foreign. The shepherd gazed toward the horizon where the valley opened into the wide plain and wondered how many others were wandering beyond his sight. Other flocks, other lives, other stories unfolding beneath the same sun. He imagined heaven as a vast field with no fences, where every creature had a name known only to the shepherd. In that thought, he found comfort beyond reason. For the first time in many nights, he felt no urge to move, no anxiety to act, only to be. He breathed slowly, his chest rising with the rhythm of peace, and in that moment, the border between himself and the divine thinned until it vanished. The boundary between seeker and sought dissolved, leaving only love, endlessly aware of itself. The shepherd smiled, understanding that every journey begins with loss but ends with remembrance. He opened his eyes, and the world glowed brighter than before. Not because it had changed, but because he had. The lamb looked up at him then, chewing softly, its eyes mirroring the innocence of the morning, and he laughed quietly at the simplicity of grace. The sky stretched wide, pale blue brushed with gold, and he knew the day would soon call him back to work. Other flocks, other valleys, other nights of searching. Yet now every search would feel different, for he carried within him the memory of being found. He rose slowly, gathered his staff, and whispered to the hills, "Even the lost are never alone." The wind answered by lifting his cloak, wrapping it around him like an embrace. He began his descent toward the lower meadows where the river wound like a silver thread through the earth, and as he walked, the stillness deepened around him. The sound of flowing water reached his ears, a soft murmur that spoke of time's endless movement, of how everything that leaves eventually finds its way home. He watched the river sparkle in the sun and thought how love is like that. Quiet, persistent, carving its path through the hardest stone until it reaches even the most hidden valleys. The shepherd's sandals brushed against wild thyme, releasing fragrance into the air, and he felt again that strange awareness of being seen by something vast and kind. It was a feeling not of pride, but of humility, the realization that every breath was borrowed grace. He thought of humanity as a great wandering flock, some running toward the light, some hiding from it, some too weary to move at all. And in each, he saw a reflection of himself. Once, long ago, he had believed that to be righteous was to stand above the lost, but now he understood that righteousness was simply knowing one's dependence on mercy. The path led him beneath an olive tree twisted with age, its roots gripping the soil like memory holding onto truth. And there he paused. The shade wrapped him in cool quiet, and for a moment he felt the world's pain gather in his chest. The wars, the betrayals, the loneliness that drives people into deserts of their own making. And he realized that the story of the lost sheep was not about one creature, but about all creation aching for reunion. Even the stars, he thought, must feel it. They're endless, shining, a kind of reaching out towards something greater. He knelt in the dust and pressed his hand to the ground, feeling its roughness, its pulse, its ancient patience. "How long have you been searching?" he whispered, though he knew the answer had no measure. Love has always been searching. It was there before beginnings, and will remain after endings. He felt tears on his cheeks, tears not of sorrow but of awe, and let them fall to the earth, trusting they would water something unseen. The river song grew louder, mingling with the distant bells of the flock, and he sensed the whole world breathing in harmony, each sound part of a greater psalm. He rose and followed the water's edge, watching how it caught the light, and in its shimmering surface he saw faint reflections, faces of people he had known, strangers he had passed, even his own gaze looking back with wonder. In that mirror of motion, he understood that being found is not a single moment but a continual unfolding, a lifelong returning to the one who never turned away. The air grew warm, the sky wide with birds in flight, and he felt within him both the ache of humanity's wandering and the quiet joy of heaven's patience. Each heartbeat was a promise that the search was not in vain. He whispered again to the wind, "You never stop coming for us." And though no voice replied, the rustling trees seemed to nod in agreement. The river widened as it wound through the valley, its surface glittering beneath the late morning sun, and the shepherd followed it as though tracing the line of a sacred thought. Each bend of the water seemed to carry a lesson, each ripple whispering something eternal about the ways of mercy. He watched how the current curved around stones instead of shattering against them, gentle, patient, yet unstoppable. And he realized that divine compassion moves the same way. It does not crush the obstacles of the soul. It flows around them until even hardness is polished into smooth surrender. As he walked, he remembered stories he had heard from travelers, tales of kings and merchants, of lovers and thieves, all of them searching for something they had lost, though few could name it. And he understood that beneath every pursuit, wealth, power, beauty, there is the same cry, the same ancient hunger to be found. The shepherd stooped to drink from the river, the coolness shocking his tongue awake, and as he lifted his face, droplets of water caught the light like tears of joy. He thought of the lamb resting now among the flock, unaware of the story its rescue had become, and smiled at how grace works quietly, transforming even the smallest acts into revelations. Above him, a bird swooped low, its reflection rippling across the surface of the water, and for a heartbeat, he felt the world open like a great window to eternity. He saw how everything, every life, every pain, every joy is gathered into one vast motion of returning, a tide drawn back to its source. He whispered a prayer for those still wandering, those who had forgotten the sound of their own names. And as the words left his lips, they felt lighter than air, carried downstream toward lands unseen. The shepherd began to hum again, the same melody he had sung in the night. But now it sounded different, wider, fuller, as if the river itself had joined the harmony. The sound wrapped around him like a cloak woven of peace. He imagined that somewhere far away, another shepherd might hear it and know that the work of seeking never belongs to one alone. Each act of love, each forgiveness offered, each mercy given, becomes another current feeding the great river of redemption. The wind picked up, stirring the reeds along the banks, and their rustling became a chorus answering his song. He could almost believe the earth itself was singing with him. The path turned east, where the valley opened toward a field of wildflowers, their colors swaying in the light, and he walked through them slowly, his fingers brushing their petals as though greeting old friends. There was holiness in their simplicity. They bloomed, not to be seen, but because it was their nature to respond to the sun. So it is with the soul, he thought. It grows toward light even when it doesn't know why. He felt a deep stillness settle in him, the kind that asks for nothing. When he looked back, the river glimmered like a thread connecting all he had learned, and he understood that the story of the lost sheep was not ending. It was only widening, becoming a river that would one day reach every heart willing to listen. By midday, the road along the river grew busier, dust rising beneath the feet of travelers heading toward the distant town. The shepherd, still carrying the quiet of the hills within him, walked among them like a man listening to a different song. Merchants led donkeys heavy with goods. Women carried baskets of bread still warm from the morning oven, and children ran ahead chasing the laughter of their own voices. Life pulsed everywhere, vibrant and unguarded, and yet he saw in their faces the same faint weariness, the subtle shadow of souls carrying more than their hands could show. One man stumbled near the water's edge, cursing softly as his jar cracked and spilled. Without thinking, the shepherd knelt and helped him gather the shards. The man thanked him with a nod, his eyes surprised by such simple kindness, and for a moment their gazes held. The recognition between two wanderers who both knew what it meant to lose something precious. When the man walked away, the shepherd felt the echo of that look linger like a blessing. Further down the road, he met a young woman, resting beneath an olive tree, her cloak threadbare, her hands trembling from fatigue. She smiled politely, but her eyes were hollow. "You've come far," he said gently, offering her water. She drank slowly, as though remembering how. When he asked where she was headed, she shrugged. "Anywhere that isn't behind me." He understood. There were many kinds of wilderness, and not all were made of sand and stone. He told her a story, not a sermon, just a story, of how he once went searching for something small and fragile and found more than he was seeking. She listened, her expression softening, and when he finished, she whispered, "Maybe I'm the one being searched for." He smiled, saying nothing because truth once spoken aloud often hides. She thanked him and continued on her way, her steps a little lighter. The shepherd watched her go, realizing how every encounter, no matter how brief, becomes part of the great mosaic of being found. He thought of how easily the sacred hides within the ordinary, how a cracked jar or a tired traveler might reveal more of God than any temple. As the afternoon light shifted, he walked on, feeling the rhythm of the world beating in time with his own heart. In the distance, he saw a group of children playing by the riverbank, building small boats from reeds and sending them into the current. They cheered each time one floated farther than the last, their joy pure and bright. He stopped to watch, smiling as their laughter rose into the air like bells. One child noticed him and called out, "Shepherd, will they reach the sea?" He nodded. "Every river finds its way." The boy grinned and returned to the game, and the shepherd felt the words linger in his mind. Every river finds its way. Maybe that was the secret of faith. Not certainty, but the quiet trust that what flows will reach the earthy ocean, even if it forgets the path. The sun began to lower, staining the sky with amber light, and he felt a peace that was both ancient and new. His feet ached, his cloak smelled of earth and wind, and yet within him was a lightness that defied explanation, the joy of knowing that every act of love, no matter how small, becomes part of heaven's great search. He turned once more toward the horizon, ready to keep walking. As the sun began to sink behind the western ridges, the air turned golden and heavy with the fragrance of wild thyme. The shepherd found a hill overlooking the river, where the evening breeze carried the sound of water mingling with the faint cries of swallows darting through the fading light. He sat upon a stone, worn smooth by years of weather and time, his staff resting beside him, and watched the horizon burn into hues of copper and rose. The world seemed to hold its breath at sunset, caught between the day that had been and the night yet to come. In that in-between, his thoughts drifted toward forgiveness. It came to him, not as an idea, but as a presence, soft as dusk itself, something that descends when the striving ceases. He thought of the lamb again, how it had trembled when he first reached for it, how instinct had told it to resist the very hands that meant to save. How often had he done the same? How often had his pride mistaken mercy for threat? He closed his eyes and let the wind move through his hair, whispering against his skin like the breath of the unseen. To forgive, he realized, is to let the wind pass through you, to release what clings, to make room for the sacred to move freely once more. He thought of faces from his past, those who had betrayed him, those he had hurt in turn, and each name rose like a spark in the gathering twilight. For some he felt pain, for others, quiet sorrow, but beneath it all was a tenderness that surprised him. Maybe forgiveness was not something given after understanding, but before it, an act of trust that meaning would come later. He whispered each name into the wind, one by one, until they were carried away, and with them went the heaviness he had long mistaken for strength. The sky deepened to violet. The first star appeared, trembling like a tear of light, and he remembered how it had looked the night before when he went searching through the dark. The memory no longer ached. The lamb grazed somewhere below with the flock, unaware that its small rescue had begun to heal the rescuer. He smiled at the irony that salvation so often circles back. What we save saves us in return. He breathed deeply, the scent of thyme and river mixing with the coolness of dusk. and felt that strange freedom that comes only when the heart stops keeping accounts. In that stillness, he heard again the echo of a voice, not his own, but within his own, speaking words without sound. "You are forgiven, because I am." The simplicity of it undid him. He bowed his head, tears falling quietly, not of grief, but of release. Around him, the night gathered gently, like a friend who knows when to stay silent. Stars multiplied, the wind softened, and in that infinite hush he felt closer to heaven than he ever had beneath temple roofs or ritual words. Forgiveness, he thought, is the music God hums when he breathes. It is what makes the lost find their way home. Night descended quietly, as if heaven itself were treading softly not to disturb the earth. The shepherd lay upon his cloak beneath a canopy of stars, their cold fires gleaming like thoughts of eternity scattered across the mind of God. The air was cool, the grass damp with dew, and the faint murmur of the river lulled him toward that fragile edge between waking and sleep. His body rested, but his spirit remained alert, drifting through memory and wonder. Somewhere in that half-dream state, he heard footsteps, not of men or beasts, but of something lighter, older, eternal. A voice followed, neither near nor far, speaking not in words, but in the resonance of being known. "Why do you seek, my son?" it asked, though the tone was tender, not demanding. He did not answer with his mouth, but with his heart, because one was lost. The voice seemed to smile. He could feel warmth rather than see it. "And what did you find?" The shepherd hesitated. Images rose behind his eyes. The frightened lamb, the vast night, the ache of uncertainty, the joy of discovery. "I found what I had lost," he thought. "And more than that, I found myself within the search." The silence that followed was full of approval. "Then know this," the voice said. "The search never ends, because love is the search itself. The shepherd and the lost are not two. They are one act of love, remembering itself." The words sank into him, like water into dry ground, dissolving all divisions he had ever imagined between the seeker and the sought. He felt tears on his cheeks, though his eyes were closed. The dream shifted then. He saw himself walking again through the dark valley. Only now he carried no staff, no lamp. The light came from within him, flowing outward with each breath. Wherever it touched, flowers grew, stones softened, and the air filled with song. The lamb walked beside him, whole and strong, no longer afraid. When he reached the fold, it opened not into the familiar hills, but into endless fields of light, and at the horizon stood another figure, a shepherd greater than he, radiant with a love too vast for form. The figure smiled, and the shepherd realized he was looking at the source of his own compassion, the mirror of what had always guided him. He tried to speak, but no words would come. Only awe remained. The larger shepherd reached out, touching his forehead, and suddenly every lost moment of his life unfolded before him, not as shame, but as stepping stones leading him here. Every failure, every wandering, every wound had been part of the finding. He saw that the universe itself was the great journey of God searching for his reflection within creation. Love, looking for love. And each soul, no matter how far it strays, carries the scent of its origin, calling it home. The vision faded slowly, replaced by the soft hum of crickets and the breath of the wind. He awoke with the dawn's first whisper of light painting the sky. His face was wet with tears, his heart weightless. He sat up, and the world felt new, not because it had changed, but because he had seen its purpose revealed. The flock stirred below, the lamb bleating softly for morning, and the shepherd rose with gratitude deep as the earth. He whispered, "I understand now," though he knew the lesson was endless. The journey would continue, but no longer as a duty. It had become devotion, a living prayer. He looked toward the horizon and smiled at the thought that every sunrise is a promise that even night has been found. The dawn came softly, unfolding over the horizon like a breath long held by the earth. The shepherd stood and watched the first light spill across the hills, painting the grass in gold and the river in liquid fire. The flock stirred below, rising one by one, the sound of their bleating mingling with the awakening birds. He breathed deeply, the air cool and sharp, carrying the scent of soil and promise. In that moment, he felt as though he could see the world, not as it was, but as it might be, renewed, reconciled, whole. He gathered his cloak and staff and began to walk, his steps light, guided by a peace that seemed to walk beside him. The road wound through a small village just waking from sleep. Smoke curled from chimneys, roosters called, and the first doors opened to the hum of daily life. As he passed, a few recognized him, greeting him with nods or quiet smiles. For even among the weary, the presence of someone who has touched the eternal leaves a trace that cannot be hidden. Near the well, a group of children watched him curiously. One of them, a boy with bright eyes, ran forward and asked, "Shepherd, is it true you went into the mountains to find a lost lamb?" He smiled, resting a hand on the boy's head. "Yes," he said. "And I found it." The boy frowned in thought. "Weren't you afraid?" The shepherd looked toward the hills shimmering in the distance. "Yes," he admitted, "but love walks faster than fear." The children giggled at that, though they didn't fully understand, and he continued down the road, his words already becoming their first lesson. An old woman sweeping her doorstep stopped him. "I heard your song in the night," she said. "It reached my window and quieted my heart." "What did you sing?" He thought for a moment before answering. "I sang to remind the dark that it could not keep what belonged to the light." The woman nodded, tears glinting in her eyes, and whispered, "Then may your song never end." He walked on, humbled that his simple melody had carried farther than he knew. At the edge of the village, he met a farmer struggling to lift a broken cart. The shepherd set down his staff and helped, their combined strength setting the wheel right. The farmer thanked him and asked where he was headed. "Wherever there is a cry," the shepherd replied, smiling. The man looked puzzled, but before he could ask, the shepherd was already walking toward the fields, the wind tugging at his cloak, like an unseen companion urging him forward. The sun climbed higher, scattering dew from the grass in 1,000 tiny rainbows. As he moved through the countryside, he found himself speaking quietly to those he met, sharing fragments of what he had learned, that loss is never final, that mercy has no distance, that every voice lifted in hope adds to the great harmony of the world. Some listened, some only nodded distractedly, yet they knew that seeds take root even in passing. A few steps beyond the last cottage, he turned and saw the village behind him, glowing in the morning light. Smoke rose straight into the sky like prayers given shape, and he whispered, "Bless them, Lord. They do not know how near you are." Then he lifted his eyes to the road ahead and felt no loneliness, for he carried within him the company of every heart that had ever been found. The journey called again, not as command, but as invitation, and with steady pace, he answered it. The road curved gently along the plain, where tall grasses shimmered like liquid gold beneath the noon sun. The shepherd walked without hurry, savoring the rhythm of his steps and the low hum of the wind that threaded through the fields. In the distance, he saw a solitary figure sitting beside the road, head bowed, hands clasped, as though clutching something invisible. As he drew closer, he saw that it was a man in travel-worn garments, his sandals torn, his face shadowed with fatigue and defeat. The stranger lifted his eyes, startled to see another traveler, and tried to rise, but the weight of his exhaustion pulled him back down. The shepherd knelt beside him and said quietly, "You've been walking a long way." The man gave a small, bitter laugh, long enough to forget where I was going. The shepherd offered him water, and the man drank greedily before leaning back with a sigh. "I lost everything," he said. "My work, my home, even those I called friends. There's nothing left worth finding." The shepherd listened in silence, letting the man's words fall like stones into deep water. When the echoes faded, he said softly, "Sometimes what's worth finding isn't what we lost, but what waits to be born after the loss." The man frowned. "You speak like someone who's never fallen." The shepherd smiled faintly. "I've fallen enough to know the ground well, but I've also learned that the ground is where the seed begins." The man stared at him, confused, yet unable to look away. The shepherd continued, "There was a night when I went searching for something small and frightened, and I thought I was saving it. But in the dark, I learned I was the one being carried." He told the story of the lamb, not as parable, but as confession, and as he spoke, the man's face softened, the lines of despair loosening around his mouth. When the story ended, silence hung between them like a shared prayer. The man looked down at his hands and whispered, "If what you say is true, maybe I'm not finished yet." The shepherd nodded. "No one is finished while love is still searching." The words sank deep, and for the first time the man smiled, faintly, like dawn pushing through fog. He rose, slowly, leaning on his walking stick. "Where will you go now?" he asked. The shepherd looked to the horizon, where clouds gathered like a promise of rain. "Wherever the cry leads," he answered. The man bowed his head. "Then may your ears never grow deaf to mercy." They parted without farewell, for some meetings are too sacred for ceremony. As the shepherd continued down the road, he felt the quiet joy that follows giving. A joy not loud or bright, but steady as the heartbeat of the world. He understood now that being found was not a moment, but a motion. A ripple that moves outward each time compassion is shared. The stranger would walk again, and so would he, each carrying the other's light, unseen but unextinguished. The wind shifted, warm and full of dust, and he whispered into it, "May every lost traveler find their way." The words disappeared into the vastness, but he knew they would not be lost. The shepherd reached the outskirts of a town by late afternoon, where the hum of life carried a different tone, louder, hurried, uneasy. Dust clung to the air like memory refusing to settle, and the streets were lined with faces worn by striving. Market stalls overflowed with goods, yet the eyes of sellers and buyers alike seemed empty, chasing need rather than joy. He entered quietly, blending into the rhythm of the crowd, his staff tapping lightly on the cobblestones. Children darted past, laughter mingled with the cries of merchants, but beneath the noise he sensed an undercurrent of weariness, an ache that no trade could mend. Near the center square, a group argued over prices, voices sharp with anger. A beggar sat nearby, unseen though he was in their midst. The shepherd stopped beside him, knelt and offered bread. The beggar blinked in surprise. "You see me," he said hoarsely. "You're hard to miss," the shepherd replied with a soft smile. The man studied him, wary. Most walk by. They look without seeing. The shepherd tore the bread in half. Maybe they've forgotten what hunger feels like. They ate together in silence. Around them, the argument dissolved, but the air still trembled with tension. A woman approached, carrying a child whose eyes were wide with fever. "Stranger," she said, "they say you speak words that heal." The shepherd shook his head gently. "No words heal, only love does." He touched the child's brow and whispered a prayer not meant to command but to remember that all life belongs to the same breath. The child stirred, the fever easing, and the mother's tears fell freely. She knelt, pressing his hand to her face, but he withdrew it tenderly. "Don't bow to me," he said. "Bow to the mercy that never left you." Others gathered, drawn by rumor or curiosity, their questions tumbling like stones. "Who are you? A prophet? A healer? A fool?" He looked at them, his eyes calm as still water. "I'm a shepherd," he said, "but the flock is larger than I ever knew." His voice carried without force, yet it seemed to reach even those at the edges of the square. Some laughed, dismissing him. Others lingered, uneasy with the stirring in their hearts. He told them a story, not of miracles but of mercy, of how one life is never too small to matter, how love never asks if it is worth the search. His words were simple, yet they fell like seeds upon dry ground. A few listened with tears in their eyes. Others turned away, afraid of the gentleness that asked nothing yet offered everything. When he finished, the crowd dispersed slowly, leaving behind only the beggar, who whispered, "You spoke to them, but I think you meant me." The shepherd smiled. "I meant everyone, which always includes you." As twilight deepened, the town's lamps flickered to life. The shepherd rose and began to walk again, the sound of his footsteps merging with the rustle of night. Behind him, the beggar hummed a tune, one that carried faint traces of hope. The shepherd listened until it faded, then whispered to the dark, "Even here, the lost begin to remember." The night fell heavy as the shepherd left the town behind, its lamps flickering like distant stars swallowed by the horizon. The road wound upward toward the hills again, and the air grew colder, filled with the scent of rain. Clouds gathered above him, thick, restless, alive with unseen energy. The first drops began to fall, soft at first, like hesitant confessions, then stronger, driven by wind that swept across the valley with a voice of its own. The shepherd drew his cloak around him and pressed onward. Each gust pushed against him as if to test the resolve that carried him through gentler days. The path became slick with mud, the stones treacherous underfoot, but he did not turn back. He remembered the lamb, the night of searching, the darkness that had once whispered fear into his bones, and he knew storms were not sent to destroy, but to reveal what anchors the soul. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the hills in blinding flashes, and for a moment he stood suspended in that fierce light, small, fragile, yet unafraid. He lifted his eyes to the heavens and shouted against the wind, not in defiance but in praise. "If this is how you speak," he cried, "then let me listen." The thunder answered like a great heartbeat rolling through the world. He continued walking, each step a prayer hammered into the earth by faith alone. Rain streamed down his face, soaking his beard, his hands trembling with cold. Yet inside him burned the steady warmth of trust. Somewhere ahead, he saw a faint glow, a cave, perhaps, or a hollow in the rock, and he made his way toward it, stumbling over roots and loose stones until he reached shelter. Inside, the storm's roar softened to a distant murmur, like the sea breathing in its sleep. He sank to the ground, exhausted, his body shaking with the chill, and closed his eyes. In the dark, he heard again the quiet voice from his dream, the same that had spoken under the stars. "Why do you walk into the storm?" He answered within himself, "Because love walks there first." The voice was silent for a while, then whispered, "And when the storm passes, what remains?" He thought of the river, of forgiveness, of the stranger on the road, and finally said, "What remains is love itself." He felt the warmth return to his limbs, not from the fire, but from that truth rekindled. Outside, the thunder faded, replaced by the gentle rhythm of rain easing upon the stones. The shepherd opened his eyes and saw that the entrance of the cave glowed faintly with the reflected lightning, each flash softer now, almost playful, as though the storm were bowing in farewell. He smiled, whispering, "Even tempest obey mercy." When dawn broke, the sky was washed clean, the air bright with the scent of new beginnings. He stepped outside and saw the world reborn, every leaf jeweled with dew, every puddle catching fragments of the sun. The hills, once harsh and shadowed, shimmered with a purity that only storms can leave behind. He stretched his hands toward the light, letting it warm his palms, and gave thanks for the night that had not defeated him but deepened him. Then, hearing a faint cry in the distance, whether bird or soul he could not tell, he smiled and began to walk again, each footprint dissolving into the soft, forgiving earth. The morning after the storm was clearer than memory. The air washed of all heaviness, every scent sharpened, the sweetness of wet grass, the musk of earth, the faint trace of wildflowers reopened by the rain. The shepherd walked along a ridge that overlooked the valley, his cloak drying slowly in the sunlight. From this height, the river shimmered like a vein of light winding through creation, and the world seemed at peace. Yet as he followed the path downward, he heard voices ahead, low, uncertain, tired. A small group of wanderers sat beside the road, 3 men and a woman, their belongings scattered like pieces of unfinished stories. They looked up as he approached, wary but hopeful, as those who have long been without direction. "Traveler," one of the men called, "do you know the way to the next village?" The shepherd stopped, resting his staff lightly on the ground. "The road divides ahead," he said. "One path leads quickly there, but passes through swamps. The other is longer, yet safer." The men exchanged glances, arguing softly about which way to take. The woman, her face lined by both age and grace, looked at the shepherd with quiet curiosity. "You speak as though you have walked them both," he smiled. "Perhaps not with my feet, but with my heart." She tilted her head. "Then which path would you choose?" He thought for a moment before answering. "The one that keeps others company." The words seemed to surprise even him. Yet as he spoke them, he felt their truth settle deep inside. The group fell silent. After a while, the youngest of the men said, "Would you walk with us for a while?" The shepherd nodded, and together they began down the longer road. Their conversation drifted between questions and confessions about loss, regret, purpose, and faith that flickered like a candle struggling in wind. The shepherd listened more than he spoke, And when he did speak, his words came softly, shaped not by authority but by understanding. There was a time, he told them, when I believed being found meant reaching the end of the road. But I have learned that being found means walking it with open eyes, even when the horizon is hidden. One man frowned. But if we keep walking without knowing the destination, what if we never arrive? The shepherd smiled. Then we will have walked together, and that will have been arrival enough. The woman's eyes filled with quiet tears. You speak as though every path is holy. He shook his head gently. Not every path, but every step taken in love is. The group walked in silence after that, each lost in thought. Around them, the landscape changed, meadows giving way to rocky ground, the sound of the river fading into distance. The shepherd noticed how their steps began to match his own, their breathing sinking to the same rhythm, and he realized what the voice in his dream had meant. Every seeker, once found, becomes a guide to others. The road had not chosen him for solitude, but for communion. Near sunset, they reached a hill overlooking the far village. The wanderers stopped, gazing at the lights beginning to glimmer below. One of them turned and said, "We thought we were following you, but now it feels as if we've been following something greater." The shepherd nodded. "You have," he said, "and it was within you all along." They parted with gratitude that required no words, and as he watched them descend toward the village, he whispered, "May your feet never forget the rhythm of mercy." When they vanished from sight, he stood alone again, but not lonely, only full, as though the world itself breathed through him. The sun slipped behind the hills, and he smiled at the thought that every step of his had simply been God's heartbeat, taking form in dust. The land ahead unfolded into wilderness, wide, pale, and still. The grasses gave way to sand and scattered stone, and the wind began to sing a lonelier song. The shepherd entered the desert without hesitation, though each step carried him deeper into silence so vast it felt alive. For hours he walked, the sun blazing above, his shadow, a faithful companion, stretched long and thin across the earth. There were no birds now, no murmuring streams, only the sound of his own breath and the distant hush of moving air. At first, the solitude felt like peace, but as the day wore on, it became weight, an invisible pressure that pressed upon his heart. Questions rose within him, slow and heavy. Was he still being led, or had he wandered too far into his own devotion? He looked around and saw no sign of life, no track to follow, nothing to confirm that his journey still had meaning. For the first time since the night of the lost lamb, doubt touched him, not sharp like fear, but dull like hunger. He knelt in the dust, pressing his palms into the hot sand. "Lord," he whispered, "where are you now?" The wind gave no answer, only shifting grains that stung his face. He waited, hoping for some voice or vision, but none came. Only silence. Hours passed. The sun descended and the desert changed color. Gold melting into copper, copper into bruised purple. The world grew cool again, and with it came the ache of emptiness. He lay down beneath the open sky and stared upward, the stars slowly kindling above him. The same stars that had watched over his search, his storm, his peace. Now they seemed distant, indifferent. A voice within him whispered, "Perhaps you were never guided at all. Perhaps you only imagined it." He turned onto his side, curling his body as if to hide from the thought, but the silence followed, relentless. What if every step has been nothing more than echo and illusion? The words pierced deeper than any storm. He felt the first edge of despair, sharp and cold, and for a moment he wished for the simplicity of being lost again, for at least then he had something to seek. Now he felt suspended between heaven and earth, unseen, unneeded. He closed his eyes and tried to pray, but the words dissolved before reaching his lips. The desert listened, unmoved. Yet somewhere within that emptiness, a memory stirred. A sound faint as breath. The cry of the lamb. That trembling voice that had once pierced his night. The memory came not as noise, but as knowing. He sat up, heart pounding. The cry had been answered. The search had been real. If mercy had found him then, could it not find him now? The thought did not erase the silence, but it softened it. He looked again at the stars and for the first time noticed how they did not shout their light. They simply were. Constant, patient, silent. Perhaps heaven was not speaking because heaven was listening. The realization fell upon him like cool rain in the dry air. He lay back again, exhaling slowly, and the stillness no longer felt empty. It felt spacious. The voice of God, he realized, sometimes speaks by not speaking at all. The desert became a mirror, and in it he saw his faith reflected, not the certainty of answers, but the endurance of trust. He drifted into sleep beneath that endless sky, wrapped not in comfort, but in quiet conviction that love had not withdrawn. It had only stepped back to see if he would keep walking. Dawn crept over the horizon, pale and quiet, spilling its slow gold across the dunes. The shepherd woke with sand clinging to his cloak and the taste of stillness in his mouth. The silence of the desert had not left him. It had seeped into his bones, changed him. He sat up, watching the first rays paint the emptiness into wonder, and felt no need to speak. Words had been his companions through the long road, but now they felt too small, too brittle to hold what he carried. The silence was no longer an absence. It was presence itself. He stood, brushing the dust from his robe, and felt the faint tremor of gratitude pulse through him like a heartbeat too deep for sound. The desert stretched before him, endless and radiant, and he began to walk. His steps left prints that the wind erased moments later, and he thought, perhaps faith is like this, walking where nothing stays, trusting that what disappears still matters. The sun climbed higher, its heat pressing against him, but the weight no longer felt cruel. He drank from his flask, now almost empty, and smiled. Even thirst, he realized, could be a teacher. It reminded the soul that dependence is not weakness, but worship. As he walked, he noticed a single flower blooming from a crack in the stone, a fragile white blossom defying the desolation. He knelt beside it, tracing its stem with reverence. You have no rain, no shade, yet still you bloom, he murmured. The flower swayed in the faint wind, and he understood. Love does not wait for conditions to be kind. It chooses to live even when the world offers only wilderness. He carried that thought with him as the hours stretched and the light turned harsh. Sweat gathered at his temples, the horizon wavered, but within him was an unshakable calm. The silence spoke again, not in words, but in knowing. You are not alone, even here. He stopped, heart quickening, for though he saw no one, he felt surrounded by presence. Gentle, infinite, familiar. It was the same presence that had found him in the valley, in the storm, in the cave. Only now it needed no form to be believed. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed not by awe but by affection. "So this is faith," he whispered, "to love without needing to see." The wind answered softly, brushing against his face like a blessing. He stayed there for a long time, unmoving, until the silence became music again. A low hum threading through every grain of sand, every beat of his heart. When he rose, he no longer looked for signs. He had become the sign. The desert no longer seemed barren. It glowed with the quiet fullness of everything being exactly as it should. He began to walk again, lighter now, each step a prayer not for guidance but in gratitude. The day passed, and by evening he reached the edge of the wilderness, where the land began to soften into grass once more. He turned back to look at the vastness behind him. It no longer frightened him. The silence had not tested his faith. It had refined it, burned away the need for proof, leaving only love that walks on simply because it cannot do otherwise. He smiled and said to the fading sun, "Even when heaven seems silent, it is still singing." Then he stepped into the green fields, the desert wind following behind him like an unseen companion who had finished its work. The land ahead rose gently into fields of tall grass that shimmered under the returning sun, and the shepherd walked among them with a new ease, each step sinking softly into the earth. The silence of the desert followed him, like a shadow transformed, no longer heavy, but tender. Quiet strength that breathed through everything. Villagers were working in the fields, their laughter scattered like seeds in the wind. Yet even here he could see weariness behind the smiles, the kind that comes from waiting too long for something unseen. As he passed, a farmer called out, "Traveler, you've come from the wilderness?" The shepherd nodded. "Then tell us," the man said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Did you find a miracle out there?" The shepherd paused, considering the question. Around him, the air shimmered with the hum of cicadas, the scent of wheat, and the faint echo of the wind that had once carried silence through the dunes. "Yes," he said at last, "but it was not what I expected. The miracle was that I learned to stop asking for one." The man frowned, uncertain whether he'd heard wisdom or madness. But the shepherd only smiled and continued on. Word spread quickly that a quiet wanderer had come from the desert speaking strange peace, and soon others came to walk beside him. Some were curious, others desperate, those tired of waiting for thunder to prove heaven's care. One woman said, "I prayed for years and heard nothing. How can silence be love?" The shepherd looked at her kindly. When a mother watches her child sleep, does she speak? Or does she simply stay and guard in quiet? The woman's eyes softened, and she turned away, weeping quietly. Others asked for signs, for cures, for certainties, but he gave none. Instead, he told them stories of a lamb lost and found, of storms survived, of deserts that teach through stillness. "Faith," he said, "is not the proof we hold in our hands, but the fire that keeps burning when nothing feeds it." The people listened, drawn by something they could not name. Some mocked, yet even their laughter carried a tremor of longing. He did not try to convince them. He simply walked, and many followed. Not because of words, but because of peace, the kind that makes no promises yet fulfills everyone. As they came to a stream, he stopped and knelt to drink. "See this water?" he said. "It does not demand the sky to explain why it rains. It simply receives." The people watched him, and one by one they knelt too, drinking in silence. No one spoke for a long while, yet something changed in the air, like a veil lifting. When at last they rose, their faces were different. Not radiant, not transformed, but gentler, as if something within had unclenched. They thanked him, though he said nothing, and went back to their homes, carrying an unspoken calm. The shepherd continued alone, though the road no longer felt lonely. The horizon stretched wide, and he thought of all who still waited for miracles, all who could not yet see that love's quiet persistence was miracle enough. He whispered into the breeze, "May they learn what silence means." And the wind, carrying his prayer across the rippling fields, seemed to whisper back, "They will." The road sloped gently downward now, and in the far distance, the shepherd saw the shimmer of the sea, an endless horizon of moving light, breathing in rhythm with the sky. The scent of salt drifted toward him, mingling with the sweetness of meadow air, and he felt his heart lift at the thought of the great waters waiting beyond the hills. He had followed rivers, crossed valleys, climbed mountains, and walked through the silence of deserts. Yet something in him knew this. This meeting of land and sea was the final metaphor of his journey. As he walked, he passed olive groves bending in the breeze, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. Children played near a small harbor town ahead, their laughter rolling across the fields like waves before the waves. The shepherd smiled, remembering the boy who once asked him if the small reed boats would reach the sea. Now he could answer, not with words, but with his life. Every river does reach the sea, he thought, because that is what it was made for. And every soul, no matter how lost, will one day remember its way back to God. He reached the shore by afternoon, the sand warm beneath his feet, and stood watching the tide swell and fall. The sound of the ocean filled him, the eternal heartbeat of creation, vast and tender. He set his staff in the sand beside him and simply breathed. There was no need to travel farther. The sea itself was both destination and teacher. He sat upon a rock worn smooth by centuries of waves, and the wind moved through his hair like a familiar hand. "So," he whispered, half to the wind, half to the unseen, "this is where all seeking ends." The waves answered with their timeless rhythm, neither confirming nor denying, only existing. He realized then that endings were just another name for beginning again. Every wave that broke upon the shore returned quietly to the deep. He closed his eyes and let the roar surround him until it became silence once more. Within that soundless sound, memories rose like drifting clouds. The lamb in his arms, the storm, the faces of strangers, the laughter of children, the desert flower blooming where nothing should. Each moment, a drop returning to the same ocean. He saw how every act of love, however small, had joined this vast tide, shaping a current stronger than despair. He whispered, "Nothing is wasted. Not a single tear, not a single step." The breeze carried his words away, folding them into the rhythm of the surf. A fisherman approached, curious about the lone traveler watching the sea. "You've come far," the man said. "Yes," the shepherd replied softly. "Far enough to know that distance means nothing to love." The fisherman nodded, gazing out at the horizon. "The sea always takes what belongs to it," he said, "and gives it back, changed." The shepherd smiled. "Then we are all the sea's children." They stood together in silence until the sun began to dip, its reflection a burning path across the water. The fisherman returned to his nets, and the shepherd remained, the wind tugging gently at his cloak. The sky turned to gold, then rose, then the deep indigo of twilight, and stars began to appear, trembling upon the waves. He whispered, I am home. And though no walls surrounded him, no door enclosed him, he knew it was true. For the one who has learned to love in silence, every horizon becomes a dwelling place of God. Night arrived slowly, as if reluctant to interrupt the sea's quiet conversation with the wind. The shepherd remained upon the shore, the waves glowing faintly with moonlight, each crest a silver whisper breaking against the sand. He drew his cloak closer, not from cold, but from reverence. The vastness before him felt alive, not empty, not foreign, but familiar, as though he were looking into the eyes of something that had always known him. He listened to the tide and thought, this is the heartbeat of God, the eternal coming and going of love. He lay back upon the sand, the stars wheeling above him in their slow, deliberate dance, and for the first time, he did not feel himself small beneath them. He felt part of their orbit, a thread in the fabric of endless return. The waves seemed to breathe in rhythm with his chest. Each inhale, each exhale, a confession and a prayer. The search was never mine alone, he thought. It was his heartbeat within me, seeking himself through my hands, my fears, my faith. He understood then what the voice in the dream had meant, that love and the lost are not two, but one. Each motion of searching is already the act of finding. He remembered the lamb and smiled. How innocent it had looked, trembling in his arms, unaware that its rescue was also his own. The sea hissed softly, smoothing the sand around his body, and he saw in that gesture the reflection of grace, ever covering, ever renewing. The stars brightened, and their reflections scattered across the tide like fragments of heaven falling home. He whispered, "You never stopped walking beside me." The wind replied by brushing his hair across his brow, gentle as a parent's touch. He thought of all the nights he had doubted, the storms that had tested him, the deserts that had stripped him bare. Each had been a revelation disguised as hardship. In the valley, he had learned compassion, in the storm courage, in the silence faith, and here by the sea, he learned completion. The journey had not been about reaching a destination. It had been about becoming one. The shepherd closed his eyes and let the rhythm of the waves speak the truth he no longer needed to articulate. That every cry ever lifted from the earth, every plea, every prayer, every question, was part of the same great return. Heaven's search for its own reflection within the human heart. He felt tears rise again, not of sorrow but of awe, and they mingled with the salt spray upon his face. He whispered, "If the lost are yours, then so am I, and I was never lost at all." The words dissolved into the sea, which answered with a sigh too deep for language. He drifted between waking and rest, the line between them erased. His heartbeat matched the tide, slow, endless, sure. Somewhere in that rhythm, he sensed the divine presence smile, not distant, not other, but intimate, breathing through him as through every living thing. The wind carried his final thought into the night. Love does not find because it never loses. Love only remembers. And the sea, shimmering under the stars, seemed to bow in agreement. Dawn approached quietly, brushing the horizon with pale light that shimmered over the restless sea. The waves sighed as if they too were awakening from a long dream. The shepherd stirred, rising slowly from where he had slept upon the sand. His cloak was damp with dew and salt, his hair tousled by the wind, but his eyes were calm, clear as the water that stretched endlessly before him. He watched as the first sliver of sun broke the surface, a radiant thread binding heaven to the deep. For a moment, he stood motionless, every breath aligned with the rhythm of creation. Then he smiled, a small, knowing smile, the kind that needs no audience, no explanation. The light touched his face, and he whispered, "You are never far." The words were carried away at once, lost in the whisper of the surf. Yet he knew they had been heard. Around him, the world came alive, gulls crying overhead, the wind dancing through the grass on the dunes, the sea glittering like a field of jewels. The shepherd's staff lay beside him, half buried in sand. He picked it up and turned it slowly in his hands, tracing the worn grooves where his fingers had held it through storm and silence. It was not just a tool, it was a record of the journey, carved by faith, by endurance, by love. He set it upright in the sand, the shadow of it stretching long behind him, and said quietly, "Let this stand as a marker of where I remembered." The sea answered with a gentle wave that broke softly around his feet. He looked down and saw his reflection shimmer there, blurred, dissolving, reappearing, as if to remind him that all form is fleeting but being remains. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with salt and light, and closed his eyes. Within him was no desire to travel farther, no ache for understanding. The search had fulfilled itself. In finding others, he had found the one. In finding the one, he had found himself. He lifted his head toward the rising sun, its warmth spreading over his skin, and felt an immense stillness, deeper than silence, brighter than vision, open within him. There was no boundary between earth and sky, between the seen and the unseen, between the seeker and the sought. Everything was one vast heartbeat, steady and eternal. He thought of the Lamb once more, not as creature or symbol, but as the small, fragile truth of existence itself, that every soul, every breath, every moment is worth the search. He whispered, "And still you come," for love, he knew, never stops moving. The tide crept higher, washing the sand smooth, erasing every footprint he had made, and he watched it with peace. Nothing was lost. The sea remembers. The sky brightened until it was almost too beautiful to bear, and for a long while he stood there, a figure wrapped in light, gazing at the meeting of worlds. When at last he turned to walk inland, the waves broke behind him in soft applause, and the wind carried his final thought across the shining waters. The shepherd never stopped searching, because heaven itself is made of that search. The sea kept answering forever and ever, its voice whispering the only truth that matters. What was lost has been found.